Well, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with World Kindness Day. I know World Kindness Day was last Sunday, but I look at World Kindness as a day that we can celebrate every day. I would like everybody here, I know we're kind of spread out, just look at someone to your left and say, I hope you're having an amazing morning. Nobody to your left, then look to your right. Right? Great. Have an amazing morning. So when you think about an act of kindness, how simple was that? Right? We could do that anytime, any place, any day. It doesn't have to be on a certain day. But what I would like you to ask everyone here, when it comes to kindness, when you said, I hope you're having an amazing day, are you saying that to yourself? Are you saying that to yourself each and every day? Because what I'd like to share with you about kindness and how we can create a world where we can all be in a world that we can give kindness to each other, it starts with you. How do you treat yourself? You always maybe you've heard the adage, like, you can't give what you don't have. If you are giving from an empty cup, are you really giving something of kindness to someone from an empty cup? Or are you filling your cup that you can actually give something that is of value that can really help somebody? So what I'm going to share with you today is that the secret to kindness on a continuous basis is first giving to yourself, to be kind to yourself so that you can be the example and be a resource for others to do the same. It's not about just doing for others. We live in a world where we constantly do for others, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what we're doing is we're creating a world that depends on things. It depends on people, it depends on situations. Is that going to move people forward? Is that going to allow someone then to now take that and be able to give that back to someone else? Not necessarily. So what I'd like to share with you is to kind of how we can shift our thinking to learn how to give to ourselves each and every day so that you could say that I'm going to have an amazing day, that you can be an example of that, and through your resources to help others do the same. So I'd like you to think about that as a foundation. So what I'm going to share with you is a couple little secrets here today. There are some things in the world that we can control, and there are things that we cannot control. Now let's talk about what are some of the things that we cannot control each and every day. Think about that. Just universally as people, what are some things that we cannot control? Let's have a volunteer. Weather, right? What the poor people in Buffalo or wherever they are up in that area, 5 feet of snow. We can't control that. They can't change that there's 5 feet of snow. So if they had something planned today, maybe there was a wedding they had planned today. They had something else. Yes, could they be disappointed? Absolutely. But could they adapt to the situation, still find a way to whatever they have to do to make something work? Perhaps maybe not, but nonetheless, we could adapt. So there are things that we cannot control. Weather. We can't control traffic. We can't control the economy. We can't control certain things that might happen in your industry. Rupa, we were talking about that earlier with your organization. There are many things that we cannot control. But I'm going to talk about 5 things that each of us can control each and every day that will contribute to not only being kind to yourself, but the ability to be that example each and every day to demonstrate this through your example of resourcefulness with your fellow peers. People you work with, your families, your communities, and when it becomes contagious over a period of time, I'm not saying it's easy, it can have a ripple effect if everyone can really understand this process. So there are 5 things that we can control each and every day. If you'd like to write this down, you're more than welcome to, because I don't have slides. I always like to, because I'm only up here for about a short time of 30 minutes. I'd rather just keep it between you, me, and everybody here. Number 1 is communication. Now, communication, who's the first person you communicate with each and every day? Your wife. Now, think about that. Before your wife, She said it right there. She pointed to herself. It's you. Communicating to yourself before you communicate to your wife, your husband, your kids, your coworkers, whatever that may be. How are you communicating to yourself each and every day? What is that voice telling you? What is it sharing with you? I'll keep it simple. There's usually two voices that you're listening to. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to say that's the positive. And if you're left-handed, make sure that's your positive. I'm either listening to my inner champion or I'm listening to my inner critic. Which voice are you communicating to on a daily basis? Is it your inner champion or your inner critic? Because here's the thing. If you're operating from your inner critic each and every day, even though you think that you're communicating perhaps with a smile or you are communicating effectively with other human beings from that inner critic, you might think that you're communicating differently than what you're communicating to yourself. It still comes out all in the wash. Here's why. Oftentimes when we are communicating from our inner critic, our communication style will be of usually one of the two, but it could be a combination of the two. Either we're communicating in a passive style or an aggressive style, or a combination of both. So what do I mean by that? If we are passive people, passive communicators, we usually don't have respect for our own rights in terms of communication. We respect the rights of the person we're talking to, but not our own. Who are typically passive communicators? They tend to portray themselves usually as the most kind people. They give their time. They constantly give. They say yes to everything. They will sacrifice their own interests, self-interest, things that they have to do to help others. And that is a good thing. But think about it. If they are constantly sacrificing things that are good for them to give to others, and their cup is now depleted, are they really giving a value? Are they really giving the kindness that you think they are? Not necessarily. Because what happens a lot of times when we give, and we say yes to everything, someone is not doing it intentionally, but they're going to ask for more and more. They call that expectations. It's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be good enough. And when we constantly are doing for others, what ends up happening? They become dependent upon you. They become stagnant. They become complacent. They become comfortable. They end up becoming bored. Does that move things forward? In a kind world, are we going to be able to move things forward in a kind world if we are complacent and stagnant? Now, that's up to you to decide. But I can say from my observation and experience working with organizations, developing workplace cultures, working with communities, working with families through my nonprofit Empowered Fathers in Action, we have not seen that to be the case, to be a sustainable model. So oftentimes that when we are now giving, when we say yes to everything, we go out of our way to please and enable people, we're not necessarily helping them like we think we are. Because they become dependent upon you. It's a form of codependency. So now if we're aggressive, we tend to have high expectations of ourselves and other people. And then oftentimes, we don't fulfill our own expectations because we get caught up in the control we can't control. We get caught up in the weather. We get caught up in the traffic. We get caught up in the economy. What's happening in our industry, a disruption in technology that now impacts my business. We get caught up in the problem, not what is, but what you think it should be. That's what aggressive sales and communication often do. So think about that. Again, we tend to become perfectionists. Now, I can relate to that because that was me 23 plus years ago. I was a passive aggressive. And why? Why was I passive aggressive in my communication? I was just a product of my environment growing up. I grew up in a household that was highly codependent. Now, everybody meant well. My mother extended what she thought was kindness to me each and every day. She would do everything for me and my brother. If something wasn't done right, she would go out of her way to do it and correct it for us. With the right intentions, but did that really help me to move forward as I grew up to become an adult? No. I became dependent. And I learned that I had to become a perfectionist just like my mother. And I had a father who was aggressive or was oftentimes just not around. He wasn't really passive, so to say passive, but in his way, it was easier to give money than to give his time because he was never around. So I was always seeking his validation. And when I didn't get it from him, guess where I sought it out? All of you. So I became a pleaser and an enabler. I would say yes to everything, so I would go out of my way to serve you and give you kindness in exchange, not knowing this consciously, for validation. And then I was exhausted, I was frustrated, I was angry because I would never, ever receive that level of validation like I thought I did. Now, when you think about it, is that really kindness? No, it might appear on the outside that it is, but in reality, it's not. Because it was dependent, it was codependent on a situation, people. So what I'm saying is that with communication, it could be passive-aggressive or both, or it could be in a healthy way to be assertive. So instead of being passive-aggressive or both, it could be assertive, meaning that I can be now, as a communicator, very specific, clear, and concise with my communication, whether if I am the sender or the receiver of that communication. I can't control what you're going to perceive what I said. Just like I'm sharing with all of you here, you're going to perceive whatever that means to you. I have no control over that. I can only share with you and be as specific, clear, and concise as I can be, whether if I'm the sender, receiver. But when I do that, I respect my boundaries. I respect my rights to that. I respect the person or people that I'm talking to as well. I'm not going to allow someone to take advantage, even if it's unintentional, of those boundaries. But rather than just do, I'm going to now communicate in a way that I can be the example of that and be a resource to help people do for themselves. I'm not saying you should never do it for anybody. That's not what I'm saying. But empowering people to do things for themselves as well. That's what we call effective communication. Learning, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth. How can I listen more attentively? Use active listening. Build rapport. Get to what's really important to people so that then I can be a resource to refer them to something that can help them truly help themselves. That's, in my opinion, more of an act of kindness that will take somebody out of their comfort zone to move them to the next level. That's communication. Number 2 is behavior. Behavior is the same way. Behavior is going to be passive, aggressive, or both, or assertive. Is my behavior in alignment to my communication? So are my actions on a consistent basis in alignment, for the most part, to how I'm communicating in an assertive way, which is interdependent versus codependent, where if I were operating from passive-aggressive styles of communication. So we have 2 out of the 5. So we have communication, behavior. Our next is attitude. Is it happening for you or to you? Is there a big difference with something happening for you or to you? Would it be safe to say, would that be the same to you or would that be different? Different, right? Because if it's happening to you, then it's something that you see it as a problem. You are dependent upon the situation. You are dependent upon another person, rather than it's happening to you to say, hey, it is what it is, and I'm going to adapt and do the best I can with what is, not what I'd like it to be. Big difference. It's a change in how we think. Number 4 is going to be emotions. How we respond versus react to situations and other people. Now, if something were to trigger something in a person, whether if they feel angry, they feel frustrated, overwhelmed, they feel worry, they feel fear, they feel shame or guilt, that could be your primary emotion to a situation or with some person. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the actual emotion that you're experiencing. You can honor that. Now, is there a choice that I can respond from that? Do I respond from that primary emotion? Whether if it's a work-related thing, whether if it's something with your spouse, your partner, whether if it's with your children, whether if it's something in the community. If I respond from that primary emotion in that moment, is that going to help the situation? And when it comes to kindness? Not necessarily. Because if I'm angry, it's probably not a good place for me to send an email from anger or to respond from that place. I can honor it and deal with it on my own, but I can choose to respond from a secondary emotion. It may not be at that moment. I may have to sleep on it. I may have to take a deep breath and pause and maybe come back in 10 minutes before I respond. I have control over that. Big difference in how we can handle life situations, work situations from a place of kindness. So emotions is responding versus reacting to situations, because we live in a society where we react to situations. We react to what people say, not respond. Are we really listening to relate and understand before we respond? And number 5, is our action. I can control my action each and every day. Is my action consistent with my communication, my behavior, my attitude, my emotions, responding versus reacting? Now, is it going to be perfect? No. But if there's going to be some kind of harmony with that, yes. So why, again, is that going to roll up into where I can now be more effective demonstrating an act of kindness to people or situations? Think about when you look at things that you've done in your life. A lot of times we don't realize that we do certain things based upon what we observe in other people. Not necessarily what's been told to us. It's what we observe in other people's communication, behavior, attitude, emotions, course of action. One of the things we advocate at Empowered Fathers in Action, I'm the CEO and co-founder of that organization. It's a 501c3 organization where we help in this case, it was fathers originally when we started working with them, but we do this with also the mothers as well. We help them to recognize if you're going to create an interdependent family structure free from limiting beliefs, to help your children grow into self-confident adults, it's got to start with you. If you're going to demonstrate acts of kindness, that you have to be able to have the ability to look at what you can control versus what you can't. Know what you can do to free yourself from your own limiting beliefs that are impacting your own level of confidence, your self-esteem. They're impacting your communication. They're impacting your behavior, your attitude, your emotions, how you react. Because your children observe all of those 5 things subconsciously, whether if they know it or not. And that is the very thing that will impact their development in growing up in terms of how they look at themselves, how they communicate to themselves and other people, how they behave, how they face situations with either a positive or negative attitude, how they respond, or in this case, react to situations or people from the emotions, and the level of action they take. Now, there are a lot of people out there that are busy but not productive. They procrastinate, just another form of procrastination. There are people that think they're communicating at a higher level, but in fact, they're not. They may say something, but their behavior contradicts everything that they're saying. You see this in the workplace. You see this in communities. You see this in just about any social environment. So think about it. Are we going through the motions of giving kindness? Or are we actually really being the example and being a resource of kindness? That's what I would like you to think about. So I talked about the 5 things that we can actually control each and every day as human beings. Besides those universal things that we cannot control, that we talked about, weather, climate, the inflation, all of that, what do you think are the 5 things, 5 things that you cannot control other than that? Anybody like to share? What would be 5 things that you, besides these universal things overall with situations that affect most people, what are 5 things you cannot control each and every day? Right there, she just said it, it summed it up as a whole. Other people. I can't control the same 5 things I just shared with you in other people. I can't control your communication. I can't control your behavior. I can't control your attitude. I can't control how you're going to react. Hopefully you will respond, but if you react, I can't control that. And I can't control your level of action. But it would be safe to say as people, we get caught up, whether if we know this consciously or not, in trying to control those 5 things in other people. Think about it with your spouse. Think about it with your people you work with, people you work for, your children, the communities you live in. Think about it. So what I ask you to look at is, if we're going to really make a shift in providing kindness in the world, we got to be able to look at what are we doing to be kind to ourselves first. Learning how to shift our mind away from the past and the future, because that's where fear resides, by the way. Fear thrives in the past and the future. They call that a fixed mindset. And that's where our limited beliefs that are established during our child development years, as I explained, my requirement to have this validation from others, because I got that from my father, and then I was a perfectionist because I got that from my mother, which led to passive-aggressive behavior that made it be very difficult to have relationships with. And then I wondered why my first engagement at the age of 26 went by the wayside, why I would lead a group of people, have great success in the beginning, and only self-sabotage it later. Because I was very difficult to work for, because I demanded too much. I went out of my way to please too many people, and because I would get frustrated because I would give acts of kindness that I thought I was giving acts of kindness, I would always constantly be disappointed. And then I'd get angry at them and stop. And then start all over again and repeat that cycle. I'd like you to think about that in your own self. I'd like you to think about that in any nonprofits that you may be operating. I'd like you to think about that in your businesses. I'd like you to think that even right down to the business unit that you maybe represent, right into your own families. And I'd like you to just think about that if we can learn to take back the control, we can control those 5 things. It was such freedom to know that I don't have to control those 5 things in other people when I learned how to do that. I've been doing, and it took me a long time to make that shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, to think in the moment. I had to shift my thinking away from expectations tied to outcomes, operating from fear, because that's how I led my life, to learning how to operate in the moment where fear is reduced, and shift my way of thinking away from expectations tied to outcomes to intentions. It was the intentions in the moment, focused only on what I can control, letting go of what I can't, that would then lead to the results I seek. I look at life as a puzzle. And the way I look at it as a puzzle is I don't focus on the pieces I don't have. I only look at what I have right now. I just know I'm going to complete the puzzle. Even with the uncertainty, even not knowing where the other pieces are going to come from, I just know it will come in time. I just have to focus only on what I can control. Now, when we can shift our thinking, imagine now If you could be that example each and every day and be an influence, and what an influence is on other people is not persuading them to see your point of view. I'm not up here to persuade you or convince you this is how you should operate your life. I'm only up here to share. You get to decide what that means to you. And by doing that, could this now allow you to take more control over your own life, to be kind to yourself? And through your communication, through your behavior, through your attitude, through your emotions and your course of action in a positive way, and the resources that you can now use to share and help other people, would that be a better way of an act of kindness for them to help themselves? Where they don't become dependent upon you. They only complement you. Think about how more marriages could be saved when we can complement one another rather than depend upon each other. I love my wife, but my happiness with my wife is not dependent upon her, nor my child. I love myself. I love the things that I do to improve myself, and my wife does the same for her, and we can come together and complement that at a higher level. It's shifting away from codependency to interdependency. So that act of kindness just creates more congruency between my marriage to take it to another level. The relationship I have with my son, the relationship I have with people I come in contact with when I work in my for-profit business as a business executive coach and doing training and consulting for corporations and high-level executives. In my nonprofit with Empowered Fathers in Action, when we work with families, direct or communities and businesses to help educate how families can create more interdependent family structures versus codependent. It's that consistency. And what I want to leave is, well, how do you make that shift? Well, it all is in your routine. It's how you think. I have a daily routine that I do each and every day. Doesn't mean that you have to do this verbatim. But I wake up at a certain time. I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I do the same thing. I wake up, I make my bed. I meditate. I journal. I then I work out. Resistance training, I do planks, do some cardio. I then take a cold shower, then gradually warm it up. I eat a healthy breakfast. I read a chapter or two out of a book, and then I review my daily goals. I do that 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I've been doing that for 23 years. Every day. Why? Because it took time. It requires discipline and the consistency every day to make that shift to think in a different way. And I can't change the world, me individually, to make the world a kinder place. But I can do my part through my example, my resourcefulness, one person at a time in my circle that I can help impact each and every day to do for him or herself. That's what I advocate here. So I'm just asking you, what can you do? What can you do differently to kind of look at kindness in a completely different way? It's okay to do for other people. There's nothing wrong with that. But think about it. If I'm constantly doing, am I really helping them long term? No, they're becoming dependent upon you. They're not doing it. And then it's not going to be good enough, and you're going to have to raise the bar. We're not helping them to help themselves to then pass that along to other people. So we're really stagnating the whole process of really helping others to really help them on a mass level when we can learn to do that for ourselves. So it comes down to a foundation. What is that foundation that you can build for yourself? That foundation has 2 layers. And those 2 layers start with how we think. How we think in a different way, again, moving away from the past and the future, from fear-based thinking to being in the moment. And learning how to think in the moment is not necessarily always easy. It takes discipline and some consistency to get there. And I know it's not, I can tell you, it took me a long time. And the reason why it took me a long time, if you would have told me 23 plus years ago, Chris, could you think this way? I would have told you, you're crazy. I mean, I was born with ADHD. And somebody who has ADHD constantly has thoughts that come and go. It's like they come a million miles per hour. It doesn't stop. I couldn't sleep. I had problems sleeping because I had a racing mind. I could be easily distracted. And now you're going to say that I'm going to sit and meditate for 20 minutes every day? Are you crazy? I did it. I white-knuckled it. I was miserable for 9 months because I would say, I don't feel anything. I just sit there and go, what am I doing? This is a waste of time. But I did it because I knew by not doing it that the life I was living at that time would never change. I would constantly still be pleasing people, constantly placing high expectations onto myself and other people, and going through this roller coaster going nowhere fast. By the way, and I struggled with 12 years of addiction as a result of it. That was the only way I knew how to medicate at the time, to escape it. So I struggled with addiction, with sexual addiction, through drinking, and through drug use. But when I learned how to change my way of thinking and take the control back that I could control and let go of what I could, and it took a while, but that discipline and being consistent with it changed my life. When I learned to be truly kind to myself, and then I could be that example and be that resource each and every day for other people. And I'm not detached with if other people are going to do anything with it. How am I doing on time, by the way? Am I doing okay? Good? Okay. So I would just ask, what would be one thing that you could do differently that you're doing now, that you can demonstrate that kindness to yourself and make a commitment to do that each and every day so that you can now be that example for the people you care about? Perhaps that you could be impacting someone that you don't even know they're even observing you. And one day that they're going to contact you and say, I know you don't know who I am, but I just want to let you know that I've been from afar observing some things you've done that have impacted me to do something for myself, and I want to thank you. And I'm saying that you do it for that very reason. It's just knowing that you help somebody through your example. You help somebody through your resourcefulness. And that consistency goes a long way. It's not something we do once in a while. We do it each and every day. Think of the impact that you could have in your own family, your own community, whatever you do in your community. Think about that impact you could have in your business and industry that you're in. We all have the capability to demonstrate kindness. To make it more sustainable, start going within to give that kindness to yourself. Because just like they say with the oxygen mask, when you're on an airplane and they do the demonstration with the oxygen mask, what's the first thing they say? Do you put the mask on to your child or do you put it on yourself first? Put it on yourself first. But most people, especially moms, out of instinct, the first thing they would do is put it on their child instead of themselves. Or somebody will sacrifice their own life to do it for others and not do for themselves, thinking they're doing the right thing. When in reality, that person is observing that you neglected yourself and is going to pick up more on that than what you did for them. So think about that. Is that really going to be kindness that actually is going to have some sustainable results? No. It's okay to give to yourself. It's okay to put yourself first, not in a selfish way. Doesn't mean you're neglecting other people. But if you can you really truly give kindness unless you're giving it to yourself? Filling your cup up so it can spill onto others. And when it spills onto others, it fills their cup because they're filling it up. And then they repeat that process with one person at a time. And as it goes one person at a time, then it reaches hundreds of people, then thousands of people, then millions of people. And God, it would be great if it could reach billions and billions of people. It doesn't take one person, it takes all of us to be responsible for our own lives to make a difference in your families, your communities, in your businesses. You only have to be responsible for yourself. Let your example, let your resourcefulness do the rest. Now, with that being said, I think I don't know if I still have more time, but I wanted to kind of leave it there. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to entertain that while I'm up here. I also have a stand here at World Kindness Day in the back under CRS Group Holdings. That is for my profit business. I'm also here representing our nonprofit, Empowered Fathers in Action. I'm so glad that there are other nonprofits here because it's all about collaboration. It's all about kindness. And I'd love to chat with each and every one of you and how we can all collaborate in a way that can continue to spread the word of kindness out there. I hope the message that was shared with you today was enlightening. I hope it could help maybe take one thing that could help you to move your personal life, your business to the next level. Thank you so much.